And we're recording. You consent to being filmed, Isaiah? Of course you do.
I consent.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of THP Strength. We are on episode 40. It has been a long time coming. Isaiah and I have been very busy. He was staying here for a little while, obviously, as you guys know. That came to an end about 2-ish weeks ago or so, maybe a little less than
Annoying the shit out of me, so I left.
that. Yeah, don't lie. Anyways, so yeah, we're gonna do a podcast today. We have a lot of topics to cover, a lot of things to talk about to update you guys. So we're back to the good old Skype setup, which honestly isn't the worst thing in the world. It tends to actually be easier. Last time I had to do a full edit. This is way easier to upload, so it's kind of convenient. But yeah, Isaiah, give us to start off. We'll do a quick update on your life, what's going on, etc. Training stuff, life stuff, all that good stuff.
So I've been here for 2 weeks now. The first week I had to train at LA Fitness, but my weight setup just got here. It's finished. I have a garage gym, so pretty excited to do that. I did a workout last Wednesday, but it was pretty easy because that's usually like the slow strength day. Nothing too intense. Friday, freaking going balls to the wall. You got me power cleaning. Um, up to a miss. So I'm really curious to see what I get. Also, I'm not dunking on Saturday, just to take a break from the 3 hour sessions that I've
We'll
been doing.
see. We'll see. We'll see.
My body's actually feeling great. Like I could jump, but I'm probably gonna stick to it. I think at the minimum, I'm gonna like test like in front of my street, like with the Vertec.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, at the most, like that'll be like the most I do, but definitely not gonna dunk. And yeah, just trying to get strong AF, trying to power clean more than Jordan Kilgannon.
I shout out Jordan in the YouTube video that I'm planning to make today. I mean, there's 2 YouTube videos I have to make now, but I'm hopefully going to do that after this podcast. But yeah, we talked about this before where Jordan thought I was talking shit. And then he went out and like lunged, I don't even know, 310 pounds, some ungodly amount of weight. And I was doing reverse lunges, and I was like, well, Jordan can do 300, then I at least should be able to do 90K for 5, which is like 200 for 5, which it puts me in an estimated max of like, on that set, I probably could have done it for 7, I think, or something like that, and I ended up calculating out to like, I don't know, 112 or something. So my goal is 120 for this cycle. But anyways, yeah, shout out Jordan Kilgannon.
I just want to put this out there. Jordan's getting strong as shit, and I also want to put this other thought out there. I don't think it's a coincidence that the two guys with like that tested like the two highest running approach verticals off 2 feet are also the like strongest dunkers.
Yeah. Limb length and being strong, you can't really, it's undisputed, as I like to say. It helps, for sure.
And like I think everybody I've ever seen that doesn't have as high of a 2 foot vertical isn't that strong per se. There's an exception with the shorter limb guys that are strong as shit. Um, but when you get your typical like 6 foot guy, like 6'1" guy, like they better be strong if they want to have like a really elite 2 foot vertical.
Yeah, and I think, this is maybe a good segue into something we wanted to talk about. We have a lot of topics to actually discuss today. This is almost just like I don't even know what we'll title this. We'll title it after we're done. But one of the things we want to talk about was Jordan's deadlift and the strength part of that. But yeah, I think getting strong, even as a 1 foot jumper, when my vertical went up 2 inches whenever you were here, from 37 to, I think I was having a tough time touching 11 whenever Isaiah came in here. Actually, the first day that we tested, I got 10-10. Like, if you remember that, we were out on the turf, or on the grass, sorry. And I was doing it like just on the day I was supposed to do a max touch, and I ended up touching like 10-10 or something like that. You remember the field? Yeah. So we went from that, and then 6 weeks later, or whatever, 5 weeks later, we made that video, and then I ended up touching 11-2, almost 11-3. So I definitely adapted like really well to the training during that period of time. And I had been doing plyos and training and stuff. Maybe I hadn't been testing it. I mean, there's a lot of reasons it could have happened. But one of the things I did for 4 to 6 weeks was just get strong as shit, like in certain lifts that I thought were going to help me as a 1 foot jumper, which again is another segue that we can kind of go into. But Yeah, it definitely seems like regardless of the type of jumper that you are, whether you're 1 foot or 2 foot, being strong is going to help you. It's going to make you even more elite if you're already elite. Like, you
Yeah.
know, I'll be curious to see what his vertical does now that he's kind of moving into a cycle that's going to be focused on power. He has a tendency to do a lot of block periodization. So that's like where you focus on only one quality and then you focus on only another quality and only another quality, which works. And sometimes I'll use that with clients, but it always works with Jordan. Like he jumps super high doing that. So this is the strongest he's ever been. He told me at least communicated, and I'm sure you probably that can be corroborated by you. But
I've seen it.
yeah, we did. He deadlifted 505. I mean, that's big. But he's definitely bigger than he's ever been, which I mean, as a 2 foot jumper can have some potentially detrimental effects, but it's all functional mass. It doesn't look like it looks like his torso got a lot more muscular, like his intra-abdominal muscles and stuff like that. His legs are freaking huge right now. Him and Chase, dude. I watched the video of him deadlifting, and Chase in the background. I commented on this actually. Chase's legs are huge. They're just like tree trunks in the background. Then you see his torso is like super tiny. It's crazy how strong his legs look right now. So yeah, I think obviously max strength we know and research that max strength helps a lot. Strength work in general helps a lot with injury prevention, but we know it's obviously can improve performance in like anything involving speed and power. So, I mean, I don't know. You got strong. You jumped really high. Getting strong helps. We know this. There's a lot of ways to do it. I like to think that doing a concurrent approach is a little bit better. I mean, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk a little bit about hypertrophy. So usually when we're gonna go into a big like strength training cycle, the first few weeks are like a really high volume, like a stupid high volume, reps sets of 8 around there, and it's usually geared towards hypertrophy. You'll like as you know, it's easier to gain strength if you have more muscle. Um, and the reason I actually wanted to talk about a little, like go a little more in depth into hypertrophy, is because I've been getting a lot of unsolicited advice from like people that are close to me that are more like into like bodybuilding. They maybe a lot of them like are hoopers. Some of them are like only into bodybuilding, just lifting to like look good and stuff like that. Um, and I hear a lot of stuff from them, like a lot of stuff they say is like, oh, like you want to build like real muscle, you don't want to build like water weight muscle, and like like that type of thing. And then they talk to me about like the muscle fibers, about how like some people are fake big and other people are actually big. Like
Well, there's like fat people and there's fat strong people and then there's skinny strong people. So
yeah,
like
yeah, and then they mention, and then there's a lot of stuff about like cutting, so like body fat and like all that stuff, and like in my head it's just like muscle is muscle, like
yeah,
you have it or you don't. And I know this is digging deep into my memory banks from physiology class, or exercise phys, and I remember something about the way hypertrophy happens in muscle cells. There's like hypertrophy from like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember them saying something about like the cytoplasm in the is
sarco.
it sarcoplasm?
Yeah.
Sarcoplasm. So there's like sarcoplasmic like growth or some shit like that, and then there's
That
growth
is correct, Isaiah. Good job. You've remembered correctly.
and then there's growth that happens. I don't know if it's like the actual fiber itself. There's like a different type of growth. So I know there's those types, but like at the end of the day, it's your muscle growing, right? Like it's like,
Yeah. So I
is
mean,
there
there's
a difference
different.
between those two types of growth? Like,
Yeah, there is. I mean, well, I haven't looked at a lot of the newer research on the specific microbiology behind that. Greg Knuckles is a good friend of mine who went to school with my brother. He's the guy that runs, I think, not Max Schmarz though. He does Stronger by Science. They do the Science of Strong. I can't remember what it is, but Greg Knuckles went to UNC with my brother for 2 years. They were like good friends or whatever. I knew Greg for a long time before I even realized what he did, but he does a lot of these reviews on strength training and hypertrophy and stuff. And he works with a guy named Trex who I've known about because of my buddy Craig for years. And Trex used to be a bodybuilder, so they put out a lot of content on that stuff. So if you wanted to look into that, I recommend going to their podcast. I can't remember exactly what it is. I should look right now because I don't want to give you guys the wrong information. Give me 1 second. But anyways, as far as the physiology of it, they usually break it down into a very simplified thing, I guess is the best way to say it. So if you wanted to get the details on that, you could. But from what I remember, specifically in stronger by science is their stuff. But what I remember specifically is there's sarcoplasmic reticulum that can hypertrophy, and then there's the actual muscle cells. So like the actin and myosin, and how that works, I don't know if it's you get more myosin and more actin, or you get more ability to cross bridge because there's more myosin heads that can link to the actin. And this is very physiology intense, but I would assume all of those things happen. You probably get more cross bridging that can occur because you have more myosin heavy chain heads and you have more actin. They probably also get bigger as a whole. You probably get more of them, maybe, is what happens. And then that's how you get cross bridging to happen, and then the sliding filament model obviously to occur. But even that, there's some conjecture on whether that's actually what happens. So I don't think, from a physio or performance point of view, that it matters obviously what's happening at the biological level, but it matters more of what is happening with your output, right? And we know how do we use this information to write training in the future or make decisions based off of some of these assessments, right? So you can definitely have hypertrophy happen in the sarcoplasm, and you can definitely have it happen in the actual muscle cell. You can also have it happen in type 1 fibers and type 2 fibers, and you can preferentially make the volume of type 1 to type 2 fibers change. So in other words, the ratio of type 2 to type 1 can change.
The way you do the training is what changes the ratio. So if you want more growth of the type 2 fibers, you're going to be doing, I think you told me it was like 20 sets or 20 to 25 sets like total in a week, and you're like pushing to failure.
Well, no, so that's if you want to max out just hypertrophy as a whole. But how you do so if you look at, I think it's Schofield is his name. He does a lot of research. I think it's something, not from Prison Break, but I think it's Schofield is his last name. But he does a lot with hypertrophy, a lot of hypertrophy research. And basically what he found is you do more volume, you're going to get bigger. Doesn't matter what load you do it at. Doesn't matter if you go to failure. You get more sets for a given muscle group, you're going to gain more muscle. Where that occurs and how that occurs is going to change according to what stimulus you're using. So if you decide, and the rate is basically the same, but and if you're well trained, you're going to gain it slower, and you're going to need more sets per week. So they typically do it by sets per week per muscle group. So for example, in our training, you probably accumulate far more than 20 sets a week for a lower body, or 25 sets a week for a lower body. Far, far more in our training, which is massively stressful. But for a track and field guy who's well trained, or even people that are trying to be well trained or move into that category, it's feasible. It's not impossible to do. It's hard, and you have to dedicate a lot of time to it. But that might not be at 8. That might not be 4x8 for hypertrophy. You might have 7x2, and it's heavy as hell. And you might have 7x2 on Monday on power clean, and then you come back with squats and you do another 5x5. Well, right there, you just accumulated 13 sets. Well, then I did for your quads, right? And your hamstrings. And then I do, in some way your hamstrings. And then I do Nordics after that for another 2 sets. Well, right there in one day, your hamstrings may have achieved 15 sets or 13 sets or whatever that adds up to, 12, 14 sets or whatever. Plus sprints, which is another shit ton of, volume to your legs. And then you add in, an additional bodybuilding circuit or whatever the following day. That's 5 exercises. So there's another 5 sets. I basically could get, I don't even know, probably for your quads, 50 sets a week or something like that. Yeah. So, I think really and it drops off, it's like the more you do, you don't necessarily get the benefit of if you're untrained and you do 5 sets a week, you do 5 sets a week and you're untrained. My upper body is a great example. I probably do 3 sets a week, maybe 5 sets a week for my biceps, triceps, and shoulders. I'll still get bigger on that. You know what I mean? It's like, the thing, it's like, if you do 10% of, what's the same? You know what I'm talking about? It's like, if you do a little bit, you get a lot. And then as you do, like if you do another 90%, you only get 10% or something. Do you know what I'm talking about of the benefits? There's like a quote about that, but that's basically how it works with muscle is like, early on, a lot of adaptation, a lot of benefit, 5 sets a week, untrained, you're going to get a bunch of benefit, a bunch of hypertrophy. Later on, that changes a lot. So back to the stimulus part, or the specific adaptations to performance, because our goal is not just stacking on muscle. We need functional muscle. It's not just gain muscle. You can change whether you have type 2 hypertrophy or type 1 hypertrophy, and that happens by intent. So
when you say functional muscle, does functional muscle mean that it's type 1 fibers that you're causing to hypertrophy, or would you say that what do you mean when you say functional muscle mass?
Yeah, so it's almost like functional for what or fit for what. Functional means that it has a function. There is something that it needs to achieve. What is the function of your bicep trying to be? What does it need to be able to do? Functional just means in the sense of getting strong for a task. So if your task is jumping, in this case, what muscles are going to function to improve jumping? So functional muscle mass is mass that is going to function to help you jump higher. So to answer that question, you say, well, what muscles do I use in jumping? Your hips, your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, your abs, your basically everything.
So it's basically like
lower body.
For jumping, specifically to jumping, having functional muscle mass means having muscle mass in your legs that are really strong, like relatively to your body weight, and it's like type 2 fibers as well. Like it's like fast, like
yeah.
Stuff that
you can have that. That's even more specific into it. But yeah, if you can get
that could be more. I mean, that could be more neural too, as well. Like you could argue.
Well, so some of the research basically indicates that past 14 weeks, it's not really possible to get very much in the way of neural adaptation in terms of just max strength. Now, I think if you're looking at a dynamic activity that's highly coordinated, then the neural, learning curve for motor learning is a lot not steeper, but I guess flatter. And you can get for a long, long time. It kind of actually, I'd argue early on, it's like you learn really, really quick, and then it flattens off a lot. It's really hard to get small improvements as you get better. Basically like a bell curve, I guess. So, a little bit early on makes a big improvement, and then as you get well adapted, it's diminishing returns, and it kind of drops off in terms of retention and improvement and things like that. So, I don't remember exactly what the relevance of this was. Maybe we were talking about type 2 fibers that we were talking about.
Yeah. Basically, how to make the hypertrophy of your muscles, like how we move from that to like having it function or having it have like the type 2 fibers, like.
Yeah, so if you wanted to just talk about hypertrophy, right? And you're just like, okay, well, what is the most specific hypertrophy that you can get? How do we use hypertrophy for jump training? Well, my goal is to hypertrophy the muscles in a cyclic manner throughout the season when I want them to be bigger and I want them to be stronger or I want them to be more capable of handling high volumes so that I can train for max strength at a certain point, or maybe the max strength is the building block for my power work that I'm planning to do down the line. You're basically using, residual training effects or whatever else to maximize your adaptation long term. So for you, it's like, all right, well, Isaiah's really well trained. While he's here, I'm going to really push him hard, and I'm going to give him a shit ton of reps in a given set, but I'm also going to tell him to push intent. Well, that's like as stressful as it can possibly be. You're just adding in volume, but you're also asking him to do it fast. So now you've pushed intent and you've pushed volume. So your load, if load is volume and intensity combined, then your load is massive.
I wouldn't even say like our goal, because I was saying like we'll focus on hypertrophy. That's actually wrong, because there's never a time where we're like, all right, the specific goal is hypertrophy this phase. It's like the hypertrophy is usually a side effect.
Yes, like, exactly. I don't ever shoot for hypertrophy is gonna happen because I have 50 sets a week.
Yeah. Because our goal is always strength. And by striving for that goal, hypertrophy happens as a side effect of that. Yes, like during the 6 weeks that we trained over there, my legs got like way more massive.
Exactly. But I think maybe what's more important is like, okay, well, yeah, if it's a byproduct of training and we're always going to be getting fucking 50 sets in a week for a given muscle group, well, we just need to make sure that if our goal is to gain more muscle mass, that we have the right nutrients in place to make sure that happens. Are we taking in enough protein? Do we have that 2 grams per kilogram of body mass, protein per body mass, or are we not meeting that criteria? Are we taking in enough calories to make sure that happens? Because if you don't have enough calories, then your body it's not anabolic, so it's not going to produce muscle mass. It might a little bit, and I've seen that happen to myself because, it's based on time frames as well. It's in a given time frame. So you might be hyper anabolic and taking a shit ton of calories, and your body's in an anabolic state. It might make muscle for that little bit of time, and then you become catabolic, and the net is less or more, depending on when you take that in or what your body's disposition is in terms of making muscle or not making muscle. That's kind of the way, at least I see it, in terms of a more complex view, instead of just saying, well, it's this or this.
Yeah.
You could say in a 24-hour period, you could say in a 48-hour period, you could say in a week, a month. But if the net of your muscle goes up in a 24-hour period, but then it becomes catabolic, it's always up and down. It's never just steady straight up. It's you take the net of those changes, and if you get bigger, you get bigger, or you get smaller. So I think that's how you're able to have a slight caloric deficit. Some people are able to, but still gain muscle mass, because obviously it ebbs and flows. So there's sometimes they are anabolic. And if the peaks of that anabolic, the area under the curve for that period of time for muscle protein synthesis is higher than the catabolic periods, or the catabolic periods are a little less for whatever reason, maybe activity's down for those periods.
I also don't know, because like when I look at my caloric intake throughout the day, like it seems like I don't eat enough, but like I'm also gaining weight consistently.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's when you eat, you're hyper anabolic. Your body is primed to produce muscle. And some people say it doesn't matter, like within a 24-hour window, and there's newer research coming out about that. But I just think it's probably more complex than that, based on how the body works. Like everything in the body is cyclic, right? Or it ebbs and flows. It's not just flat line.
And I'm also very
so much.
Yeah, and with like how often I train, I'm probably in that like hyper anabolic state very frequently. And I also eat very what is the form of eating called when it's like eat when you're hungry, like self-regulated, like auto-regulated. Like if I'm not in a caloric deficit like on purpose, like I'm out here, like if I'm hungry as shit, I'm gonna eat a cow, like
exactly. Yeah. Like, that's in my opinion what I kind of like to say is like eat to fuel your body, or eat when you're hungry, or drink water when you're thirsty, or stuff like that. Like your body gives you pretty good signs if you're hungry. You get hunger pains, your stomach hurts.
You're hungry. Headache. I'm very hungry right now, and I just remembered that I bought Triscuit crackers and a block of cheddar cheese yesterday. That's literally one of my favorite like snacks of all time, is Triscuit crackers and a block of cheddar cheese.
Triscuit. I said Triscuit. You mean Triscuit?
Triscuit. It's my second language, John. Come on.
You're right. You are correct. Well, we're 22 minutes in. We could make it a short episode. Maybe people would like that. I don't know. But
I said we could make it a short episode.
We could.
Nice and easy. We can start moving towards 20-30 minute episodes, and
we'll cut this one at 30 minutes. How about that? That would be good.
30 minutes. All right. So while we're on this topic of hypertrophy, most people that are like attracted to hypertrophy are bodybuilders and all that stuff, who are also the people who lift upper body. So let's talk about upper body and jumping.
We can talk about this. I think that for 1 foot, I've said this before, but I think for 1 foot jumpers, I've just never seen it be advantageous. The best 1 foot jumpers in the world do not have a lot of upper body mass. I mean,
except Torai.
Torai is the only one, and I would argue he's not the best 1 foot jumper in the world. He's only high jumped 7 foot. There are people that jumped a foot higher than him. Like he's 6'2", 6'1".
Bro, that is mind blowing to me. By the way, is when Jordan Sutherland high jumped 7 foot. And there's people out here that are jumping fucking 7'10".
I mean, some people jump. Usually it's like right now the best in the world are anywhere from 7'6" to 7'8". If you're getting 7'10" right now, you're people. Huh?
That honestly confirms how you said like there's like the best 1 foot high jumpers of all time. They're like in the 50s, and Jordan Sutherland probably has around. Because he said if he had perfect technique, he could probably get like 7'3" around there. Mm-hmm. And he has on a vertex, he would probably test like 44. I would guess like
something like that.
Yeah. So
and he's tall, he's long. So like 7'3" long and still testing a 44 and only jumping 7'3". I mean, that's pretty telling. But there's a lot more to high jump. High jump, I've learned that there's a lot of ways to jump off 1 foot, and for 1 foot jumpers like Torai or like Jordan that are just freaks of nature, they kind of like stomp through the floor. They don't necessarily drive from their hips super effectively. I mean, they do, but they drive from their knee a lot too, like a lot, and they push off their calf really hard a lot, and it's a more compliant. It's a slightly more compliant, longer ground contact, but they're so powerful and they're so explosive that they're able to use it. Whereas like someone like me, I basically have to have my leg completely straight and drive from my hip and my calf, and my knee is almost like, I don't know, it's a force transducer, but it does apply force as well, obviously. And I think a lot of
You mentioned the knee acts more like isometrically, right?
yeah, I think especially at the distal end of the muscle, it might even be concentric. But yeah, I mean, pulling on the patella and getting it to store energy, that definitely happens on your highest, absolutely highest jumps. Your knee's going to bend, but it's not a lot. I think more of the time it's like, hey, this knee is meant to hold. It's going to, increase the force of the whole jump. But I think it's almost like, hey, I'm going to hold this joint together while my hip goes through hip hike and hip drop a lot. And then my calf is also pushing. Well, it's usually you plant in pronate, and then when you supinate off the ground and plantar flex, you get a shit ton of force off that, along with your center of mass being really high at takeoff because your hands are above your head, your knees up. And for those of you that don't understand what I just said, you basically use your calves and you use your ass, and when you drive your hands really high, you're higher before you even left the ground. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. Jordan always shits on me because I speak above people or higher than people, and he told me I need to dumb stuff down, so I'm going to dumb some stuff down. Real quick on the muscle thing, if you lift more, you'll get bigger. It doesn't matter if it's a lot of reps or a little. It doesn't matter if it's high sets and reps or low sets and reps. Just do more. Get bigger. Do more and you'll get bigger. That's the whole basis of hypertrophy. You want to get type 2 fiber, lift fast, lift hard. Fucking stand the weight up, try to bounce it off your back. You'll get bigger muscles. You'll get more explosive type 2 fibers. There's a time and place for that. That's what else I was saying. Glad I could do that. Jordan, I hope you enjoyed that. If you're listening to this, on upper body, it's not good for 1 foot jumping. It'll help for 2 foot jumping because you have more time to produce force. Think about a punching bag. If you hit a punch or a heavy bag, you jab a heavy bag like a 1 foot jumper, that whatever, you can get it swinging really quick. That's your body, analogous to your body. If you're a 2 foot jumper, you typically rest your hand on the heavy bag and you push through it, and then it'll get really swinging. Upper body mass doesn't really seem to be detrimental for that. I also think that it could potentially load up your tendons if they're softer by when you swing, if you're on a scale and you swing your arms, it's like a roller coaster, right? Like the peak forces are at the bottom of that. If you're going down the hill and you get to the bottom, that's where the peak forces are. Or if you check the swing. But if you just do a normal arm swing, that's where you'll feel the most amount of force, or you'll see like on a scale, you'll see the pressure on the scale go all the way up on the arm swing. So I kind of think that, there's a lot of maybe that's amortization. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's what you'd observe. Is that correct, Isaiah? Do you want to go get a scale and verify that?
When the peak forces are the highest?
Yeah, like is it highest at the bottom with the arms at the bottom of the swing or at the top of the swing where you check it?
Oh, I'll test it on the scale real quick. I have to go downstairs, but
do you have an old school scale? Do you have an old school scale or a new school one?
Oh, never mind. It's the electronic one.
Dan Back said it's when you check the arm swing, but I think you don't usually check the arm, you usually just finish high. So I think it's at the bottom.
I would guess that, yeah. If just intuitively, if I were to make a prediction, I would think it would be at the bottom.
Well, let's say, in this scenario, we believe that's what happens intuitively. We think we need to verify this, but at the bottom of the swing, you get a lot of force. If that's what happens, that's typically when you're at the bottom of your jump. So if you're at the deepest position in your jump, or you're squatted at the bottom of your jump on a 2 foot jump, well, if you have really soft tendons and you have that additional arm swing whipping through the bottom of that, like if you're, because your arms are obviously, I don't know what the best way to word this is. Your hands are coming to a bottom dead center point, and that's wherever all the forces are peaked. That's when you're at the bottom of the jump. You're going to get the tendons to get a quick stretch at the bottom of the jump. And if you're able to synchronize that as you push up and finish high and you have big arms, you might be able to get, more of a stretch at the bottom of the jump because you have bigger arms. And you also have the benefit of now you're higher in the air because your big ass arms are really high in the air. So your center of mass moves upwards, before you leave the ground. In other words, if you don't understand center of mass, I don't really know. There's no simple way to explain it, but it's the sum of, if you were to take all your body parts and add them up and average where they were, that would be your center of mass. If your hands are above your head, your center of mass is higher before you leave the ground, and you've applied a shit ton of force. So if it's at, say it's 4 feet off the ground with your big ass arms above your head, your arms get a little bit bigger. Maybe it's 4'6" off the ground or 4'4" off the ground if your arms are massive, right? Yeah, it's harder to accelerate those big ass arms, but they've raised the starting point before you leave the ground. So now your 40-inch vertical, or your ability to produce 40 inches of force vertically, is 4 inches higher before you leave the ground. So now maybe there's a benefit in doing that. I don't know if I explained that appropriately.
But would that outweigh how much lower you jump because of having more mass on your upper body?
Give and take, man. It's give and take. That's why I always say it depends. Some people, you can get the benefit, and I agree with you. Yeah, maybe there's a downside. I guess Jordan's going to be a good analogy. He's going to be a good test subject for this because his arms look pretty thick right now. But you also have the benefit of maybe periodizing arm strength or arm, momentum or whatever. I'll tell you this: if you jump higher as a jumper off 1 foot, or even 2 foot, I'd say this is probably true. Your arm action when you take off the ground is probably the arm speed you're going to get when you go to do whatever action you're trying to do. Like, at least I experienced that as a 1 foot jumper. Like, I can't take off. If my arm action in the air is faster than my takeoff action, that's really hard to finish the jump. You know what I mean? Because if I can't synchronize my arm with my leg drive and push up and the push off the ground, that all has to be synchronized. If that's slower than the speed the ball has to move for a windmill, then like that's really awkward. You know what I mean? It's just like really, really awkward to do that. So what I found when I was doing my windmill is when it was rhythmic, like it was one speed the whole time, that's when I had my best attempts, because I'd complete the jump and then I would do the full arm action at the same velocity instead of trying to speed up the takeoff and then because I'm thinking about a quicker arm action. You know what I mean? And that's kind of a weird coordination thing, but instead of going slow to fast, or as a 1 foot jumper, it really fucks me up. But as a 2 foot jumper, I think you can get away with it a little bit more just because the takeoff's always the same. But as a 1 foot jumper, that's always been a hard concept for me, especially when I was doing the windmills the other day. Oh, shout out me. I did my first windmill. Ooh, yay. But yeah, I think maybe that's the impact of that. Is it you change as a dunker, if you change the takeoff velocity and you change the ground time, then your arms velocities are going to be different as you're swinging it than it is for the ball coming around, which is just a hard thing to do coordinatively. I don't even know how to explain that. It's an awkward thing to explain. It's like jumping hard and then going into slow motion, or jumping hard and then trying to move your limbs crazy fast. It just looks discoordinated.
Yeah. CJ, he was big as hell at one point in his upper body.
How did he jump?
No bueno.
No bueno? What about you?
When I was my biggest upper body, that was when I had really bad knee pain and like was jumping really low. So
what did CJ have when he had big arms?
Knee pain, jumping really low. So, but we also have never trained properly and had big upper bodies. So
when I get bigger, I get knee pain faster. Everything breaks down faster. But I'm a 1 foot jumper.
Yeah.
That is the biggest. I would say that.
I think it's better to just be on the safe side and not get big. Unless you need it for your sport, I would say it's better to, or you just want to look good for the girls. I
mean, sometimes, like, I will say I've done a lot of upper body training, and what it did do for me was my whole mass went down because I had less fat mass because there was more training volume. So that can also be an impact, right? Like when I did a lot of upper, I'm never going to gain a lot of mass. Look at these wet noodles. They're just never going to be big. But unless I do steroids. Which are my
noodles.
Yeah. Then they'll be slightly larger noodles. Look at them, bro. Look at them. Look at that shit. So yeah, I think, for me, it was, hey, I added 20 sets a week and I lost 3 pounds of fat and I maybe gained 2 pounds on my arm. Well, I lost a net of 2 pounds or 1 pound of fat. Sweet. Or 1 pound total. Now I weigh less and my arms look bigger and I look stacked. So maybe that's a benefit. But to do that, I had to have a lot of running volume as well. So it wasn't just adding upper body. It was just having a lot of volume in general. But yeah, that's kind of my opinion on it. I think there are more important things like getting a good jump, like a good takeoff mechanics as a 1 foot jumper. But 2 foot, I guess the consensus is we don't know. Maybe we'll do a test trial where we get Isaiah Huge and see what happens. You want to do that?
I'd be down.
Chris jumps higher. Chris Colditz jumps higher with bigger upper body. He's someone that jumps higher with bigger upper body.
Right now we have a Vertec, so we can't objectively measure if I'm jumping higher or not.
True. All right, but that's 33 minutes.
Get me huge before I go see my girlfriend in 3 weeks.
Perfect. I got you. But I'm gonna close it out. We got 34 minutes through. I kind of like the shorter episodes; they're kind of nice. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, and comment. Don't forget that we were the 30 for 30 for 30. We were the 30th ranked podcast after 30 podcasts in 30 days in the fitness category, which is
Guys, we haven't uploaded a podcast in a while. If you are listening to this, screenshot where you're listening, put it on your story, write what you liked about it. You got to write what you liked about it. If you liked about it and tag us, me and John are going to repost it. We're going to repost all of them. We need to put stuff on our stories.
Hell yeah. And yeah, so that's all we got for you guys. Also go to our YouTube, subscribe to those, follow us on Instagram, THPStrength.com if you're looking for the best coaching. If you want subpar training, go train with anyone else. And I mean literally anyone else. Name anyone else that's more subpar than what we do.
Think of a jump program in your head that's not THP. They're ass.
They're subpar. And if you want to verify that, let's just go out and compete. Put our best athletes against their best athletes jumping and see who wins.
Yo.
Isaiah, we stand by that? Yes, we do.
Yes, sir, Bob.
Peace out.